Hey there, it's Kat and this is Brews and Reviews. Today's video is my September 2021 wrap up, and honestly I can't believe we're already in October. September seemed to go by in a flash, like that car zooming past my house right now. Anyway, moving on, I took part in 2 readathons during September and actually did alright at both of them, surprisingly. Given that September was a very busy month for me because obviously one of those readathons was the Because We Can readathon, which I co-hosted and did video challenges for on the daily and embarrassed myself on the internet even more so. So I managed to complete all but one of the Because We Can readathon reading prompts, and that was to reread an old fave because I just didn't have time to reread anything because I was failing at life. But aside from that, I did alright. I managed to read the books that I needed to read to cover all 6 of the other prompts, plus the group book, so I feel like I did okay. And also I took part in the Magical Readathon, which I actually managed to complete all of the prompts for that, and with separate books to the ones that I read during the Because We Can readathon. So I've got a lot of books to talk about, and let's get straight into it, because I'm definitely rambling right now. So the first book that I read this month was Horror Store by Grady Hendrix. This is known as Haunted IKEA, the book, and I think that it did that very well. This is the second Grady Hendrix book that I read, and I really wasn't disappointed. I enjoyed this one a lot because I do find shopping centres in general quite creepy. I haven't actually been to like a real IKEA for like 15 years. I don't even remember the last time I went, but I don't really have the urge to go there because I'd probably get lost and I wouldn't like it. Anyway, I really enjoyed this book. It's essentially about a discount IKEA called Orsk, and creepy things happen there at night, like somebody's like vandalising things, like weird poop smell in places, and they're like, oh, we'll have to keep some people back and scout the area, see who's doing this, we can catch them in the act. Turns out, not people! So I did think that there was some quite creepy things in here, and there's kind of some gross things in here as well. I don't know what it is. There's like weird snot things that get mentioned. This isn't a spoiler or anything, it just, snot, it's just gross. Like, it's so wrong. I didn't want to read about it, because when I was reading the bit I was like, oh, that's gross. Anyway, that probably won't like gross people out like it did with me. The rest of the story is really good, it is really creepy, and I think I would read it again, to be honest. I feel like when I'm in the mood to read like a haunted building book, then I definitely want to read this one again. So yeah, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Next up I read Final Girls by Riley Sager. So this is a book about a woman who has survived a serial killer and been the final girl of an incident. You know, classic horror trope, one woman manages to survive, you know. It's actually one of my favourite horror tropes, and I think that kind of affected how I felt about this book. And the thing is, I know I was warned about this to not expect it to be the slasher horror final girl story. This is something that happens after that, and it's a completely different story, but I was way more interested in the flashbacks of the slasher stuff. And that was the story that I really wanted to read. I wasn't super interested in what was happening. Also, there were a lot of like ass characters. They were just really not pleasant people, and I didn't care about them. Having said that, I will say that the writing was good, and I did enjoy the writing, and I enjoyed the end and the flashback scenes. I think the story itself was just a little bit disappointing to me, and I think that might have more to do with my assumptions than the author's writing style. So I would be interested in reading a different book where I don't have that kind of assumption relating to its name. I really feel like if this book had a different name, then it might be better served, so that people didn't go into it thinking that they were going to get, oh cool, a story about final girls, because it's not really what it's about. Not really. So yeah, I don't know, it was vaguely disappointing, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, which seems to be a consensus among booktubers who are reading this book. It's just not quite what it looks like it should be, and thus it is disappointment. Next up I read Skin Deep by Liz Nugent. Now the only thing that I knew about this book is that it was a thriller and it was about horrible people. And I went into it thinking, oh yeah, it'll be about horrible people, yeah? No, really, really horrible people. So nasty. Oh my god. You wouldn't want to meet any of these people. They are all evil. And I love it. And I've got to say, I don't usually love reading about horrible people all the time. It really depends. And I feel like this book did it really well. And the characters, oh god, they're so evil. But the ending of this book is so satisfying. I was reading it and I was like, oh my god, I hate the main character. I hate all of these people. Why are they like this? Oh my god. And then the ending happened and I was like, bitch. And I sat there and I thought about it and I was like, oh my god, I can't believe that was the ending. And I really enjoyed it. And I was very satisfied by the ending of this book. And it actually made me raise the rating of this book from a 3-star because of the general thing. When I hit the end, I was like, oh no, 4-star. Definitely. Because I like the ending. It was good. Next up, I read the group book for the Because We Can Readathon, and it was To All the Boys I Loved Before by Jenny Han. Now, this isn't usually the type of book that I enjoy reading. It's a contemporary romance about kissing boys! Oh! No, it's not really about kissing boys. I'm sure everyone knows what this book's about. If not the book, then you probably watched the Netflix movie. Anyway, this girl called Lara Jean writes letters to everybody that she loves, and she stores them in a shoebox, and then one day the letters accidentally get sent out, and boys. So this book was okay. I did find bits of it enjoyable. There were bits of it that were funny, but it's very forgettable. I feel like some of the characters in this book are less likable than they are in the movie, and that's, sucky. But I did like the sister relationship between Kitty and Lara Jean. Yeah, that's all I've really got to say about it. It's kind of a meh book for me. It worked out as a 3 out of 5 stars. I was kind of expecting it. It's not really my genre. And, it was average. One thing that I do have to note, though, is I listened to the audiobook of this, and it was quite jumpy. I don't know if anyone else has had this problem, but if you are considering having the audiobook of this, if you buy from Audible, then please note that I had a jumpy audiobook. Next up, I read Blood Heir by Amelie Wen Zhao, and this is an Anastasia retelling. A really dark, bloody Anastasia retelling. I mean, the Anastasia tale is quite, grim anyway, but oh yeah, this one has some blood magic and a lot of slavery going on, so that's not fun for anybody in this book. I don't think anyone at all in this whole book is having a good time. Everybody is having the worst time. But I did enjoy it a lot, and I enjoyed it more than I was expecting to. And I didn't realise that it had so many sequels that were already out, so I'm definitely going to have to get my hands on those because I want to see where it's going after where it left off at the end of this book. The slavery elements come into play when there are characters who have this magical ability. I can't remember what they're called, but they have an affinity for something, and the main character has an affinity for blood and can do horrible things with it if she chooses to. There's more normal powers as well, like air and wind, fire stuff, normal stuff, and there's blood. So much blood. I sound like I'm traumatized, but I promise I'm not. If you don't like reading about blood though, maybe give this one a miss. It probably gives it away in the title that it's got Blood Heir, but just in case. I ended up giving this one 4 out of 5 stars. Next up, I read Gawain by J.P. Harker. This is the first book in a new series by J.P. Harker, and you may have seen me talk about the Caledon books. Look, they live here. I don't know if you can see that, but really good, really enjoyable. And this is an Arthurian legend retelling, and this book centers on Gawain. Now, I went into this book not having read the back of the book, not really knowing very much about Gawain and the legends surrounding him, so I was sort of going in blind. And I really enjoyed it. I think there's something about the way that J.P. Harker creates setting and culture. And there's this picture of the culture that is being built up and the traditions and festivals that happen that you really feel like you're part of it and they make sense. It's not just like, oh, we're having a festival, blah, blah, blah. You kind of feel the relationship that the people have with their gods and why they're committing to these different festivals, and it's really interesting. I also think this book deals with interesting debates around religion because the main character is both a Christian and still believes in the old faith, so believes in both of them, and they both play a part in his actions. I think it's an interesting discussion because neither of them are being put down, and I quite like these discussions and how they played into what was happening in the story. Another thing I really liked about this story is how there are 2 storylines going side by side. So you have different perspective characters. You have Gawain, whose story is more traditional and kind of what you'd expect from Arthur's knight going on a quest sort of thing. This is pre-Gawain meeting Arthur or anything like this, so this is purely Gawain's story, but his quest is more traditional and kind of what you'd expect. And the other storyline that is happening is of a raider who lives in the north who just kills people. She's quite a ruthless leader, and I really enjoyed her chapters, and I feel like they worked really well as a counterbalance for what was happening with Gawain, because Gawain's tale sort of felt more fantastical and traditional, and Mary's just a lot of murder. She's not very nice, but she will not stand for evil people. So I liked her even if she was quite antagonistic towards a lot of people. Anyway, I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars and I definitely recommend it. Next up I read The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. This is a book I've been meaning to read for ages because everyone told me it was really creepy. Was pretty creepy. It's based on The Turn of the Screw, a book which I have not read. So I feel like my review on this is largely not the best review. I can only really comment on this book and not how it reimagines the classic. So I did enjoy this book, and I found aspects of it quite creepy. Basically anything with children is quite creepy. Children in a haunted house setting is like, you know, quite scary for me. I don't really know how to comment on this book without spoiling it a little bit, so I give it 4 out of 5 stars, and if you don't want spoilers, just scroll until I put this book down, please. So spoiler stuff begins now. I was a little bit disappointed with the end of this book and the fact that it wasn't supernatural at all. I just wanted it to be supernatural. I was in the mood for supernatural and it wasn't, so I was a bit miffed because I thought that would have been cool and it wasn't. The very end and finding out what actually happened with Maddie, fine, I liked that. That was an alright twist. I didn't enjoy that it wasn't actually supernatural and would have liked something creepy to have been happening there rather than just, you know, children. I think I was just annoyed that it wasn't supernatural because I was like, is it not? Is it not? And then when it wasn't, I was like, oh, sad. Next up, I finished off a book that I've been reading for about 2 months, on and off, just randomly picking it up and putting it down and just reading it whenever. And that is Killing It by Asia McKay. This is a sort of action book about a woman who works as a spy / assassin and kills people for the government. Anyway, she went off and had a baby, and now people are like, can you do your job properly because you are a mother now? And I don't really love stories about that because of course you fucking can. Anyway, it's a mix of comedy and action, and it's kind of like one of those movies that you put on when you don't want to think about anything and you just want like 90 minutes to go by. So I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, and it was on my physical TBR for the year and now it's not. Next up, I finally picked up The Atrocity Archives by Charles Stross, and I really enjoyed this one. This book actually broke my streak of no new 5 stars that weren't rereads since May. I was very happy to have really enjoyed this book, and I think it just hit that spot for me. Like, a lot of books I've really enjoyed and have been 4 stars, and they just haven't quite made it to 5 stars, and this one did. It just made fun of all bureaucracy. I really enjoyed this book because it's about a guy who works for a government agency that deals with things like Lovecraftian nightmares and dimension hopping Nazis and things like that, and there's still like a mountain of bureaucracy and someone being like, you're late all the time, you need to buck up your ideas, Sonny Jim. Because I've worked in a place like that, and people are just wrong. They like need to sort out their priorities, and anything that takes the mick out of that just has a way straight to my heart. So I really enjoyed this. I thought it was really funny. I really enjoyed taking the piss out of bureaucracy in any fashion, and I really recommend this to anyone. There's like 11 books in the series, so I really can't wait to carry on with it. Yeah, that's a fun time. But also there are a lot of like trigger warnings. There's a section where they talk about lots of like Nazi stuff in this, so if you don't want to read about that, then maybe don't pick this up. Next up, I read Legendborn by Tracy Dion. I read this as a buddy read with Mel from a book feed named Mel. I have seen this book floating around on BookTube for quite a while, and I really wanted to read it. It's another Arthurian retelling. Weirdly, this month I went for thrillers and Arthurian stuff. Who knows why? So this book takes place on a college campus where this girl called Bree goes there, and she finds herself embroiled in some magical demon things with the reincarnations of the Knights of the Round Table. Not reincarnations, but kind of. It's weird. That's the easiest way to explain it. There's also another storyline which involves Bree investigating her own past and the magic that comes from her ancestors, and both Mel and I agreed that that part of the story was so much more interesting than the Arthurian parts. They felt very basic, whereas the things to do with Rootcraft were very much more interesting, and there was a lot of good social discussion around racism and things like that, because wow, society's full of white people. Turns out they really like white people. Shocking. The end of this book really saved it for me, because it was kind of sitting at like a 3.5 stars, and then it bumped it up to 4 stars because I did enjoy the ending. And the only other thing that I want to say is that I was kind of disappointed that it isn't just a standalone. I really thought this book was a standalone, and it's not. I don't know why I thought it was a standalone. I've never heard anyone talk about it being part of a series, but apparently this is book 1 in a series, and from where it leaves it, yeah, it's definitely book 1. So I was kind of disappointed in that. I kind of wish it was a standalone, but hey-ho, I will read the next one when it comes out. Yeah. So the next book that I read this month, I am very proud of myself for reading, so I hope you guys are proud of me too. It's The Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson. Chunky chunky boy, I read this chunky boy. It's the 3rd book in the Mistborn trilogy. I finally finished the original Mistborn trilogy, and I liked it. I feel like this book has resolved a lot of the pacing issues that I had with the 2nd book, so I didn't feel like this needed to be any shorter. I think that the number of pages that exist in this book are adequate for what happens in this book. There are a lot of mysteries to be unravelled and solved, and yeah, I really liked them. I really liked a lot of the things that happened. I really wasn't expecting the end to end the way that it did, though. I was like, wait, what? Oh, okay then. If you know, you know, and if you don't, I'm not spoiling it because it was sadness, but it was a good ending. I enjoyed the ending, even if it was bittersweet. So this one ended up at a 4 out of 5 stars, but it was a better 4 out of 5 stars than the previous book in the series, which I think is the weakest, and that usually happens with books with the 2nd one being the weakest, so, you know, fair. I still think the 1st one's the best one, and then this one, and then the 2nd one. And the last book that I read this month was another 5-star book, and I can't tell you how excited I am to have read 2 new 5-star books this month. I've been on such a slump of not having things be 5 stars, and it's been killing me a little bit. Anyway, the book that I read was Deadbeat by Jim Butcher. This is book 7 in the Dresden Files, and I was talking about it in my last month's wrap up as the one that I thought I read that was book 5, and it wasn't. It was book 7. And now I've read that one too, so hopefully the names will be less confusing for me in the future. Deadbeat, however, was definitely an improvement from the previous book, which I rated 3 out of 5 stars. This one had everything that I wanted it to have in it to just really create an enjoyable story. There was a slight return of the I'm a macho alpha man, must protect the ladies, which I could really do without. But aside from that, there was necromancy, there was zombies, the Watchers were in it more, there was a T-Rex, dinosaurs! I don't know, it was really good. I really enjoyed the end of this book, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. So, those were all the books that I read throughout September 2021, and yeah, I had a really good time this month. I read a lot of good books, and some that were just meh, but mostly really good books. So if you made it this far into the video, then please leave me a dinosaur emoji, because dinosaurs! I'm sorry. This video may be absolute nonsense, and if you've made it this far, then I congratulate you, because you've waded through some shit, my man. Also, if you did take part in the Magical Readathon, let me know how many prompts you actually managed to complete, because I'm just really curious. If you like this video, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!